All right, we are pleased to be joined by our good friend and Hoops HQ writer, Alex Squadron. Alex, thanks for hopping on.
Appreciate you guys having me.
We haven't talked to you in about a year. Pretty much this time last year, we chatted with you to talk about the upcoming March Madness tournament. Maryland, obviously, in a very different position this time last year. But I want to talk about what you've been up to. You've written a lot of stories. What is your favorite story you've been able to cover, a favorite thing you've been able to do in terms of college basketball in the past year?
Oh man, yeah, well, definitely very different a year ago when we were talking about Maryland, and I was on here, and I think I was predicting them to like potentially be a sleeper Final Four team. Um, yeah, I mean, it's been an obviously incredible year for college basketball. I think just like the level of talent this season, it's up there with any season in college basketball history. So that's been like really fun to cover. Done a bunch of stories. I kind of cover the game nationally. Obviously, I'm based in New York, so a lot of Big East, but done a bunch of big stories. I guess to keep it in the Big Ten, I did a story on Yaxel Lendenborg, who's was a National Player of the Year contender for Michigan, transfer from UAB, has this incredible story. Guy basically didn't play basketball until he got to college, 11 games of high school basketball. And obviously worked his way up from junior college level to UAB to now star of arguably the best team in the country. So talking to him about that journey was incredible, and just a really good kid who, obviously is a huge inspiration. So yeah, I mean, I've done a bunch of kind of features on some of the big players, and then kind of covering the day-to-day, news stuff that happens. A lot has been going on, as I'm sure you guys know, in the college basketball world with just like eligibility cases and just this incredible freshman class and covering all of that, and then a couple kind of big features as well. So it's been great.
I know you worked on some stories kind of about that, some of that eligibility stuff. Where do you see that going in the next couple of years for college basketball? I know that there was the whole Charles Bediako thing. Like, what do you think is going to end up happening?
Yeah, it's tough to kind of know. I mean, it is obviously just complete chaos at the moment. The NCAA is really lobbying for some like help, like federal legislation, some help from Congress to really create some rules, because the big issue is that the NCAA's kind of ability to enforce its rules has been brought into question. These court cases, I mean, Bediako obviously didn't win and he was ruled ineligible, but that doesn't mean that another court, another judge might rule differently. So I don't think you've seen the last of kind of these kind of eligibility lawsuits and cases. And it'll probably continue to kind of spiral a little bit into chaos until there's some sort of, either assistance from Congress or just a better way for there to kind of restore order. Because it's hard to blame the players for trying to become eligible if they have an opportunity to sign these massive NIL or rev share contracts that are significantly more than they would make in other places. I mean, it's tough to knock them for trying. I mean, who wouldn't try to sign that big contract and to play college basketball? So I don't think we've seen kind of the end of it with the Bediako case, but hopefully there's at least some movement towards, all right, we need to get this under control and kind of restore some order to whatever's going on right now.
I know you cover the game, but from your personal perspective, what do you think would be the right answer to this issue?
I mean, it's tough to say. I think that there are so many different layers to it. Look, the thing is, college basketball has completely changed. The landscape has completely changed with NIL and with rev share and these contracts. Obviously, we're entering sort of a new model with rev share, and I think that will change things probably for the better a little bit in terms of how chaotic NIL was. And obviously there was sort of no parameters there in terms of teams just collecting as much money as they possibly can, and then offering out contracts, kind of as NIL contracts, but really they're just contracts. It's just money that collectives have, organized and fundraised for. So I think that with rev share and this new model, we're at least entering there are a little bit more parameters. And I think that, we need to get to a place where there are just clear eligibility rules, clear transfer rules, and in terms of contracts and things of that nature, clear, clear guidelines there, because what we've had is essentially just the wild, wild west for a couple of years now with NIL. So yeah, I think just like clear rules in terms of some of these, bigger issues that we've been seeing. That's kind of the future, but I think that that's a way easier said than done, and that's why I think that they're really lobbying for some help from Congress.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think not necessarily specifically, but some of the things you just outlined with NIL, with the transfer portal, is a big reason why this Maryland team looks so different than the team last year. Obviously, Kevin Willard leaves, Buzz Williams comes in. Can you kind of break down the three teams that were involved in there, and how those teams have how those teams' seasons have played out? Obviously, you have Maryland, who did not have a very good season. Kevin Willard goes to Villanova. They have a pretty good season. And then on the other side, Buzz Williams leaves Texas A&M. They have a pretty good season. All that, like you just said, would not have happened, or it would have been very unlikely would have happened, let's say, 15 years ago. Kevin Willard probably would have stayed at Maryland if it wasn't for NIL and the transfer portal, because the landscape was so different. He obviously left to go to a school where he could have more rev share. At least that was part of the deal for him. Can you kind of break down what kind of went wrong and went right for those three teams this season?
Well, I think it's a really clear example of, with the transfer portal, you're just rolling the dice. And especially when you're taking over a program when the portal's been open for, weeks before you get there, and you're not able to sort of understand the situation, assess your roster. Some of these coaches were going through the NCAA tournament. They're not focused on the portal, and certainly not focused on the portal and the situation at a school that they're not even at. So I think Buzz spoke about this and kind of just how difficult it was scrambling to put together a roster, not really knowing the situation at Maryland, accepting the job late, and then just kind of not feeling like he hit in terms of the players that he brought in, and not having a great grasp of the situation. And that's sort of what can happen. Now, on the flip side, I talked to Bucky McMillan, who's now the coach at Texas A&M. He told me kind of the same thing. It was an absolute scramble trying to put this roster together. And he just hit. I mean, a lot of these guys were perfect fits for his system. He has a very unique kind of offense called Bucky Wall, where they just push the pace, shoot a lot of threes. And obviously he was recruiting, and scouting for that, but he also didn't have a pick of kind of endless options, because a lot of the top guys were already gone. So he really had to kind of settle is not the right word, but he had to, move down to sort of the list until he found guys that fit his system. And I think they obviously did a great job in terms of bringing the right people in, and it's just clicked. And they far exceeded, most people's expectations in terms of where they finished in the SEC. And I think similar situation at Villanova with Willard going in there. Obviously, he got some late adds to that team that have been major difference makers. And Willard's obviously a really great coach as well, and has familiarity with the Big East. So I'm sure that helped too. But it's a really good example of the transfer portal. Sometimes you hit a home run, and sometimes it's just these guys don't fit at all, and it just clashes. And what we've seen is that that's not it's not like the most expensive rosters are the ones that perform the best. Often the most expensive are the most disappointing. So it really comes down to fit. Did you bring in the right guys? And I think that it takes coaches, even really good coaches like Buzz, some time to just get a feel for that, especially at a new school. What do I need to compete in the Big Ten? What kind of players should I be recruiting? What's kind of my situation here in terms of resources? How do we sort of build the perfect roster for this specific situation? And it just sometimes takes good coaches some time to get accustomed to that. So I don't think, obviously this has been a rough year, but hopefully the future's a lot brighter.
Yeah, I think at least from the perspective we've heard from Maryland fans is Maryland got a late start to transfer portal, but obviously Texas A&M got an even later start. People were like, come on, Texas A&M had a pretty solid season. They put out that kind of troll graphic where they were projected 13th, finished 4.
Yes.
Whatever you want to make about that. Hey, they still finished 4th in the SEC in a year they were not supposed to be very good. Sure, they overperformed expectations, but I think from the Maryland fan perspective, it's they got a later start and they did significantly better than this team. I think, as you said, unless you're kind of one of those blue blood teams, you don't really know what you're going to get year in and year out, just because there's going to be so much turnover each year in the transfer portal. If a player is not in love with one thing about the school, they're probably going to pick up their stuff and leave. I want to ask what you think of what you think this means for Buzz Williams, and if he can rebound and have a successful season or many successful seasons at Maryland going forward.
I do think so. I mean, look, obviously the guy's a established, experienced coach who knows what he's doing, and I think he spoke very openly earlier this week about, I was coaching the SEC, I wasn't coaching the Big Ten. This is different. The type of player you want to recruit, just everything about sort of the situation he's in is different from the one he was in last season. And again, accepting the job, while kind of the offseason is unfolding or has already unfolded, you're starting behind. So it feels like more of a surprise, I would say, that Bucky and Texas A&M just had as good a season as they did, and more kind of reasonable, I guess, or expected that Maryland might, flounder given the situation. So Buzz kind of said, look, we've now, we had a situation where we were coming in and racing to try to put together this team, and it's basically been the opposite, kind of preparing for the upcoming off season, in that since I got here, I've been scouting, I've been recruiting, we've been figuring out what we need and who are the best fits to make this program thrive. So I feel like there is certainly hope for the future. Obviously, a school like Maryland has a proud history, and and as recent as 2 years ago was in the Sweet 16. So there's obviously tons of potential there. I just think it sometimes takes a little bit of time, especially given what the new landscape looks like in terms of the intense turnover and all the changes that are kind of happening day to day, it seems like, in the college basketball world. So I think there definitely is hope for the future.
Before we get back to the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor. The Catalyst to the Game is brought to you by Catalyst Hot Dogs. Catalyst brought the Jersey Dog to the DMV, featuring premium dry-aged Black Angus all-beef hot dogs made in Maryland, served with handmade toppings, including hot onions, relish, and their signature Texas chili sauce. And don't miss their original garlic knot dogs. Catalyst always offers vegan dogs as well as gluten-free buns. Shout out gluten-free buns, because Catalyst has food for everyone. Find them in CQ Stadium in Section 14 and the Xfinity Center in Section 210. Tell the people a hot dog is a sandwich. All right, now here is more Under the Shell. Yeah, no, you broke it down. It's definitely a little ridiculous. I know Buzz has talked about it a little bit, but are you able to explain from your perspective kind of the difference in recruiting from an SEC team to maybe a Big Ten team, and why that is?
I think, look, it just depends on the kind of style of play. Like, for example, the Big East is known to be extremely physical, guys that thrive in that conference. Look at Zuby Ejiofor, who's going to be the Big East Player of the Year 2 times in a row. This guy is like a physical, just dominates the paint type of player. And you can see the kind of guys who kind of control and dominate the SEC. And the SEC Player of the Year is Darius Acuff, fast-paced, electrifying guard, really good scorer, really good playmaker. Obviously there are different styles that you're going to see, but like in the SEC, you might need a guard who can contend with a guy like an Acuff. In the Big East, you need a big who is physical enough to handle guys like Zuby Ejiofor. So, I mean, those are obviously small examples of small sample size in terms of like all of these teams are going to have slightly different styles. But I think in the Big Ten, look at some of these teams that have thrived. Michigan is massive. I mean, they have incredible size, arguably the best front court in the nation with Florida. To contend with a team like that, like you need size. Like you can't not have size. And obviously Maryland had some injuries that didn't help on that front. But like that's something that, you go up against this thing every day, throughout a season, you start to realize, okay, I need more physicality, more size. Look at teams like Michigan State who have thrived, they're defensive kind of juggernauts. So I just think like stylistically there are, kind of brands of basketball that are different among the conferences. And sometimes you hear about it and you kind of know about it, but it takes a season to kind of get a feel for it. So I think when he's speaking about that, he's speaking about like just getting used to what kind of players and what kind of the style is of the Big Ten specifically compared to SEC.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the national landscape. Let's talk first about the Big Ten. I think right now, probably projected to have somewhere between 8 and 10 teams make the NCAA tournament, mostly depending on how conference tournament week shapes out. Do you think this could be the year the Big Ten finally wins a national championship after so many years?
Yeah, I think it's been since like 2000, and this has got to be as kind of hopeful as you can be heading into this March Madness stretch. Given how good Michigan is, I literally just right before we started recording, Duke, who's obviously the kind of favorite and likely to be the number one seed, just found out that Caleb Foster is at least out until the Final Four. Who's their starting guard. So that opens the door a lot to Michigan probably entering the NCAA tournament, assuming that they win the Big Ten tournament, which I think a lot of people expect as kind of the favorite to win it all. So Michigan, being sort of, I think that they've separated themselves from not only the rest of the Big Ten, but from most of the teams around the country. So I think that gives the Big Ten a tremendous chance. And then you've got all of these teams who are certainly like Final Four contenders and kind of in the mix, who, if they get hot, could end up in Indianapolis. Like, I love Illinois has the number one offense in the country. They obviously need to get better defensively, and they're very reliant on a freshman who's tremendous, but you kind of never know with these guys when you get into March. So Illinois, Nebraska's been outstanding. Michigan State with Izzo is always going to be a contender. Purdue has been like very disappointing, but again, like this is a team that entered the season as like the number one team on a lot of top 25s, and has arguably the best point guard in the country in Braden Smith, and a really good coach, Matt Painter, and just like tons of experience across the board. I think everybody kind of feels like they might figure it out and start clicking at the right moment. So do I think they wouldn't be right now my choice? I wouldn't choose a Big Ten team to win it all. So I guess I can't say that I like predict that they will, but this is as good a chance as they'll have, I feel like, with just how dominant Michigan is, and then this kind of grouping of teams behind Michigan that if they get hot could certainly go on a run. So
yeah, absolutely. I also think Wisconsin will be a team that, just because of some of the upsets they've pulled off this year, will be a team that a lot of people probably project to their Final Four, Elite Eight.
Totally. Yeah, they had 3 road wins against they beat Michigan, they beat Purdue, they beat Illinois. They have definitely the formula with really good guards, really good shooting, and they're kind of making strides defensively. So I think that's another good. They'll definitely be a sleeper team, I feel like, to make it.
Absolutely. Well, who actually is your pick to win it all?
Well, I was like kind of fully in on Duke, and then all these injuries have brought that into question. They just, to me, look like clearly the most dominant team over the past couple months. I mean, obviously playing in the ACC, which isn't quite as strong, but they've been just dismantling teams, and then had that win against Michigan on a neutral court. I think right now, if I had to choose, which I'm going to have to in about a week, I think I would lean Florida. I think just how dominant this team has been in the SEC. I mean, they've been destroying teams. They've won 10 in a row, I think by an average of like 20 points. To me, the best front court with Ruben Chinyelu, who's going to win Defensive Player of the Year. Obviously Thomas Houck and Alex Condon as well. And their guards are starting to figure it out, get more comfortable. I mean, people were really down on this team during non-conference because they lost 4 games. They lost to Arizona. They lost to UConn. They lost to Duke. These are close losses. And again, they had these 2 guards who were still getting kind of into the flow of things. And then the SEC, who I think Hoops HQ is projecting to have the most bids, Florida dominated. I mean, they were, teams like Arkansas, who are sleeper picks to go to the Final Four, they beat by 34. So they're just in a good rhythm. It has the feel to me of like kind of last year, where like they started to get in good flow heading into this time. I mean, obviously we're recording before the SEC tournament tips off, and now they're going to lose in like the second round because I said all this.
Exactly.
But I just think that they have, to me, like in March, what you need is like great defense and really good rebounding, because like you're going to have games where shots aren't falling. So do you have kind of the, that formula of like, we are a lockdown team, we control the glass, they're the best rebounding team in the country, they have the best rebounder in the country, the best enforcer, and their defense is phenomenal. And then you throw in like they have guys who can shoot and who are starting to get into a good groove. I like Florida to repeat.
No, I think that's very fair. They also have some guys who have been there last year, which I think is obviously super helpful.
Totally, yeah. All those front court players, yeah. I mean, I just know that I shouldn't have said that, because this is going to go downhill now quickly. But
they're going to lose in the first round of the SEC tournament, and then
we're going to get upset.
Get upset.
All off the one line,
and then I'll clip it and put it on social. Yeah. Away from the national title contenders, are there any mid-major teams you're looking at that could go on a run? Obviously, conference tournaments haven't totally wrapped up yet, or even started for some of them, but any of those teams you think people should have their eye on?
I mean, there's a bunch, I guess, from like I wouldn't call them a major sleeper because, they've been ranked in the top 25, but St. Louis has been awesome. And they've kind of fallen off, last few weeks. I think they had 3 losses, and I don't even think that they were like a big favorite heading into the A10 tournament. But they won the A10. They're the best 3-point shooting team in the country by percentage. To me, like, just an incredible kind of centerpiece in Robbie Avila, who's like unselfish, perfect for their style of play. Josh Schertz is as good a coach as any. So I just think they have a lot of the pieces to be able to go on a run. I mean, if you can shoot the ball that well, have a really good superstar, they just like play with tremendous chemistry, and it really seems to fit really well. One of those teams where they hit a home run in the portal, and just like everyone's bought into their roles and it's just kind of clicked. I could definitely see them getting hot and going on a run. For like a bigger sleeper, let's see. I mean, High Point is again going to be in, and they're, it's a similar formula. They average 90 points a game. They shoot a bunch of threes. Just kind of this high octane team that like you can see teams like that just kind of gaining momentum and like everybody getting behind them. You just kind of can picture it. And they dominated. So like they've 15-1 in conference play, won the conference tournament. So like they're certainly have momentum on their side and are not going to be scared of anybody. And so teams like that, where they just have that ability to get hot, those are the teams that tend to potentially win a couple games and surprise some people.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you of that Oakland team from a couple years ago.
I saw that.
I want to ask you this
comparison.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think one of the bigger questions, and obviously the conference tournaments will decide this, but are you buying the hype from Miami, Ohio? If they do not win their conference tournament, do you think they should get into the NCAA tournament? Obviously, undefeated season. What else are they supposed to do? It's kind of what we saw in college football a couple years ago with Florida State. What do you think?
I mean, I think they should be a lock to make the NCAA tournament. I think they're going to, regardless of what happens, which is good. I mean, it just, even the optics of just like to go 31-0 and not make the NCAA tournament because you got upset in the conference tournament. That'd be like, what are we doing here? To have that season, to not be able to see them in the big dance would just be, to me, a major disappointment. So I think they're in, and I think they're good. I just don't think that they're as good as probably most people expect. I mean, they're obviously going to be everybody's pick to upset, some teams in the NCAA tournament, given what they've done. And they certainly, they know how to win. A lot of these wins have come in overtime, one possession games. There's something to be said for like they figured out a way. I mean, every single time they figure out a way to win. But my fear is that when you get to the NCAA tournament, they might not be in those positions, given their first round opponent, and the magical season could come to an end. But they deserve all the credit in the world for what they've accomplished, and I feel very confident that that'll be rewarded and they'll get to the big dance, which is great. I mean, everybody wants to see that. So hopefully I'm wrong. I mean, I hope that they surprise some people. That's why we love March Madness. But if I were to when I'm filling out my bracket, A lot of it is matchup based, but I don't really imagine picking them to go very far.
Yeah, definitely a super fun story. I think there's a chance they lose to UMass on Thursday, but
I mean,
like
look,
that,
they're
like
31-0, and they entered their conference tournament not as the favorite. So
which is ridiculous. Yeah,
that got to tell you everything you need to know about what people think. There's been a lot of questions about their kind of scheduling, and I know Coach Travis Steele has talked a lot about like not being able to get the matchups that he wanted to build a resume. Whatever your opinion is kind of on that, they're 31-0. Like, they've beaten everybody. So that deserves to be rewarded. And, even if they're not, a true 31-0 team in terms of talent wise, it's like basically impossible to go 31-0. So it's pretty incredible.
agreed. Good teams win games. Well, Alex, thanks for joining us. To those of you out there, check out all of his work at Hoops HQ and some of his books as well. So, Alex, thanks for hopping on, and we'll look forward to see how your predictions end up panning out here.
Definitely don't hold me to that. I appreciate you having me, man. Good seeing you.
Likewise, peace.
Later.